Welcome to John Redmann, Power of Attorney, the show that aims to empower you through knowledge of the law. I'm Attorney John Redmann.
And hello everyone, I'm Shauna Sanford. Happy New Year. We are delighted to be back for our very first new show of 2013. And with the new year comes several new laws here in Louisiana. They range from limiting access to public libraries for certain sex offenders to decreasing voting hours. And we're going to delve a little deeper into several of them.
Today, Attorney John Krentel joins Power of Attorney to break down the laws that you need to know about, what's changing, what's staying the same, and what matters.
And there are a lot of new laws on the book, more than 800 new laws. That's got to be a record.
Yeah, almost 900. I think it is a record, really. It's so many.
So, and they range. There's a big range here, and most of these laws are in effect now. We're going to talk about one law in particular that actually will not be implemented until a little bit later on in the year, and it deals with creating a nationalized driver's license for everyone. It's called the Real ID Act of 2005, actually.
Right. It's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out because currently there's a big debate. Right now, the U.S. government wants people to show passports because our current state driver's license or state ID is not acceptable under the standard set. So you couldn't even go into a state building to go and see your court records in the federal courthouse, for example.
Right, or at the airport.
It's going to
affect a lot of people.
It's going to be a big deal.
It's going to be a big deal, and can you imagine that it might even be a big nightmare, the changeover from a regular driver's license to now having to get one of these specialized driver's licenses?
Your passport would be fine, except so many people in Louisiana, like the rest of the country, don't have a passport. Normally, you don't need a passport unless you're going to fly maybe to another country or someplace. But 30% in Louisiana don't have passports. 36%, I think, is the national average of people who have passports, which means 60 to 70% don't have passports.
Right, and there are a lot of strong feelings on both sides of this issue. Some people feel very strongly about not creating a national ID. Some people say that there's a need for it, and this, of course, all came about as a result of the terrorist attacks of 9/11. And the question is, will this make people feel safer?
We're going to have a good discussion. I know our special investigative reporter, Shauna Sanford, was out there talking to people. We'll have a video clip.
That's right. We got some interesting comments from folks, and so we'll take a look at that. Coming up next, though, it is a new year, and there are new laws on the books that definitely will affect you, possibly someone you know. Attorney John Krentel will join us to talk about what you need to know about Louisiana's new laws. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the show. Well, now that 2013 is well underway, there are more than 800 new laws that have taken effect, and they could certainly impact you or someone you know. Joining us to discuss these new laws is Attorney John Krentel, who has extensive experience in commercial litigation and class action lawsuits. John, thanks so much for being here with us.
Shauna, you're welcome. Glad to be here.
We have more than 800 new laws on the books. That's a staggering amount of new laws.
That certainly is. I mean, the legislature was hard at work last year.
Yeah.
Last year's session was a non-fiscal session, which means that it could address a whole range of topics. This coming session will be a fiscal session.
Right.
So each legislator is limited to, I think, 5 bills. So we'll be more focused on fiscal matters. And with the state's financial circumstances, that's a good idea.
Yeah, and these laws, when mentioned, these laws were passed not only by the legislature, but voters also had a hand in putting some of these new laws on the books.
I think there were 9 constitutional amendments.
9 constitutional amendments, and of course we are known for adding amendments to our state constitution, right?
That's correct.
Well, let me add my wisecrack here. Just because we got a lot of new laws doesn't mean that a lot of good is accomplished. I'm one of the people who believe that what's on the books already covers and protects us in a lot of good ways. That's not to say that there are not some badly needed improvements in the laws that were passed. There are certainly laws on here that most of us will say that's a good law, we needed that. But a lot of this is what we call pork in the pork barrel politics that takes place in Baton Rouge.
I wouldn't question the wisdom of the Louisiana legislature.
Well,
far be it from me to do that. Point well taken, though. Sometimes less is more. One can only discern for the future what might happen given the the new laws. We'll have to test them.
Let's talk about some of them, shall
Sure,
we?
go ahead.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Let's start with the Real ID Act. We were just talking about this. This is one that is going to become effective this year, later this year in October. It was supposed to happen in January, but the state successfully petitioned the federal government to delay it, so now it's going to happen in October. John, why don't you explain to us what the Real ID Act is all about?
Well, Shauna, as you noted, the Real ID Act is a federal statute, which is applicable to all the states in the United States and its districts and territories. And 26 states have requested that the Real ID Act not be implemented by the Office of Homeland Security in January, and Louisiana being one of them. And Louisiana's concerns, as the other 26 states, is that it's really an identity theft issue.
An identity theft issue.
Identity theft. In other words, if a Louisiana driver's license is scanned at the airport or at a federal building, there's grave concern that the data will not be held in safekeeping. Not through any fault of any federal official, but it just will be more vulnerable to identity theft.
And so essentially what is going to happen? Information about all of us will go into some sort of national database? Is that
one could assume. I mean, that's yet to be determined. I don't think that's clear.
Exactly how it's going to be implemented.
Exactly, and I think that might be one of the concerns of the state of Louisiana.
Well, just keep in mind, we've talked about it on this very show. Credit card companies, banks, mortgage companies, hospitals, everybody in the world, the very best in cutting-edge technology companies lose people's personal data. So understandably, a lot of states are saying, well, hold on, federal government, you yourself have been hacked and your data taken. We're not so sure we're ready to just jump right on board and say, take every single person in our state, every adult who needs an ID, take their ID information that's got date of birth, maybe it's got a social security number. I'm not sure what all is going to be on this ID.
Right, right.
And so let's take a breath. And I'm one of the people who believes that I don't want the government to have every single person's ID information unless they really need it. It used to be you could get on an airplane without an ID.
But at this point, it's a done deal. I mean, this is going to happen, right?
Well, I think it's up in the air. I think Louisiana has petitioned the Office of Homeland Security for an extension of the application of the Act. Whereas, on the other hand, news reports have indicated that Louisiana will have some type of effective ability in place or capacity by October 2013 to respond to the Act in an appropriate way, to adhere to the Act, to comply with the Act.
Hopefully they'll figure out some kind of way where, obviously, if for safety reasons, you can have your ID, you can prove who you are, and you can go to the bank, you can go to the airport, you can travel, but they safeguard your information, like you said.
Well, it's a very interesting topic, and there are a lot of feelings on either side of this issue. And I got a chance to talk to some folks at the New Orleans airport here and ask them this very question. What do you think about creating a nationalized driver's license? They had some very interesting responses, and we're going to go ahead and take a listen to some of those.
See, all that sounds great to me, theoretically, but the actuality of it has proven that the federal government cannot responsibly handle the immense amount of power they're getting. And I feel that I'm not comfortable with them getting any more power. I don't think we have the propensity for abuse of that power greatly outweighs the potential advantage that would increase our personal security.
It's possible. However, I believe that politically, there are too many people who are saying states' rights. I think you could do the same thing if all states had the same criteria for getting a license. There are some that are really loose and some that are very tight.
Laws come and go, but again, there's one thing to say it's on the books and then it's what people do. And so you just got to really make sure, you got to educate people. Don't make it as a scare tactic for people. People don't respond well to fear, but just make it something where you educate people about, the benefits of it, and then make it accessible if it's going to happen.
And again, those were some folks who I got a chance to talk with at the airport about this whole issue about the Real ID Act, and I think they brought up some very valid points and concerns there. You know, the whole idea that the federal government is going to have access to the information, and there we heard from them a lot of concerns about what they might do with that information and whether they're going to be responsible with that information. Those are valid concerns, are they not?
I think so, Shauna. You know, the television show Person of Interest recently came out in the last year or so, and you know what it's about. It's about the Big Brother being able to watch, and Big Sister being able to watch every move that we all can make and predicting what moves we might make. And on that show, it's used for the good, but it certainly could be used for adverse purposes.
Right.
John?
Just the very same point. In other words, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. If the government is all in all your business and they know everything, it just gets a little bit scary. So I think the legislature, at least we have time. We have time between now and October when it's supposed to take effect to hopefully implement safeguards and protect people from the government and make them prove to us that they're going to use the information responsibly. Hopefully our legislators will hold them to it.
Well, I did come across some folks who are in favor of this, and one person in particular says that this could possibly solve several problems. First, uninsured motorists and skyrocketing incidences of hit-and-run accidents. The benefit fraud covering multiple states could also be helpful in preventing illegals, her word, from voting, and attracting more people from overstaying temporary visas. Could that, I mean, is she right about this? Are those reasons why this could be a good thing?
Certainly. I mean, those are reasonable objectives. But frankly, there are concerns, though, that we're required to carry papers.
Right.
And that's moving away from the freedoms that are granted in the Louisiana Constitution, the United States
and the
Constitution.
U.S. Constitution.
Of course.
I want to add to that, too, because, you know, Ben Franklin said that, you know, people who give up rights in the interest of safety deserve neither. And what I just heard is, you know what, if you are required to give up all these rights, if you have to have this national ID card and you show up and you show us your papers, and I'm a kid and I remember watching the Cold War movies about show us your papers, that strikes a chord with me. These undocumented, we don't know that they're undocumented. Let's make them carry documents. Let's brand and tattoo people. That's what the Nazis did. I don't want to say that it's that extreme, but let's not edge in that direction, because Nazism edged in that direction. It didn't happen overnight. The Constitution says you should be able to travel freely without being interrupted. Nobody should be able to stop you and ask, hey, where are you going? They shouldn't be able to do that. And this is a very personal, my personal opinion. What that comment there is about, do you have insurance? Do you have your papers? Are you illegal? Are you not illegal? That's profiling. That's stopping people because somebody who gave you power said you get to stop people just because they don't look like you. I mean, you're not going to stop your brother-in-law and your friend. You're going to stop people who don't look like you, who don't go to your country club. And I think it's a bad precedent. So proceed with caution.
Well, but what do you say to the flip side of that? Because this, of course, again, coming from the terrorist attacks of 9/11, you want to jump in and say something about that, because, you know, people are saying, well, if someone had stopped them and questioned them, then, you know, maybe it could have been prevented.
Sean, I don't know if you recall, but it bears noting at this point, the 9/11 Commission clearly recorded the fact that an FBI agent, a woman in the West, identified the fact before 9/11 that the hijackers were learning how to fly planes but not land them or take off with them. She reported that to her supervisors. With all due respect, the same supervisors are going to be handling all this data, or similar ones.
Right.
And nobody did anything about it.
Right.
That had nothing to do with IDs. It had to do with the fact that sometimes we miss the boat. And we need to be able to not miss the boat. We need to be able to fill the holes in the boat and pay attention to those women and men who signal that something is an outlier. John, what do you think?
I totally agree. In other words, let's do our jobs properly. Let's enforce the laws that are on the books, and those small potatoes will take care of themselves.
Okay.
So let's not get caught in the thick of thin things. We got a lot of other laws.
I know, we are quickly running out of time. I know it really is, and one that's not going to go away anytime soon, but we can move on to some other topics. Another big law that's changed is shortening of voting hours on Saturday election days. This, according to the Secretary of State, is to help decrease the cost to save money. Yeah.
Well, certainly the state needs to save all the money it possibly can, and that law pertains specifically to opening later, not 6 o'clock, not 6 o'clock in the morning, but 7 o'clock.
And from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m.
I don't know about you, Sean, but I vote at 6 all the time. I'm there,
mean,
right? I'm waiting in line.
That is the time to go
sure,
and
absolutely.
vote. I mean, it's 1 hour. You know, is it really going to make that big of a difference?
Well, it seems to the Secretary of State it's going to make a huge difference.
Yeah.
I mean, he got this law passed.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's like that comment, follow the money, and this is my comment on that. Follow the money. I don't think it's a coincidence that it is one particular political party, and it is the secretaries of state of one particular party that advocates the shortening of hours, and it is the Republican Party. Now, it could be just an amazing coincidence that literally across the board, it is the Republican Party who advocates the shortening of the hours, and not the Democratic Party. And there are scientific studies that show it is the working man who's got to go to work to feed his family, and he's got or she's got to get to the polling place bright and early to beat the lines and to vote in order to get to work and not lose his or her job. So it is the working man and the socioeconomic poor who more often than not vote Democratic. I think that the political pundits, if they're intellectually honest, will say it's more about helping get Republican votes. I don't believe it's intellectually honest to say it's about the Republican votes. Now, that's my opinion. I believe if you research it, if you Google it, you'll see a lot of things that support that. If you want to save money, close the polls an hour early maybe, or in the middle of the day, break for an hour. But
maybe so. When we were talking
but that's not where you save money, not shutting out votes. Don't save money on save money elsewhere.
And we're talking about Saturday, when perhaps a lot of people can actually go to the poll to vote, rather than during the weekdays. I mean, this is convenient for people to go on
Shauna,
Saturday.
wouldn't it be helpful to have other ways to vote that wouldn't cost as much? Early voting by mail. What about computer voting? I mean, we live in an online society. Everybody's got a phone. Smartphone, iPhone, this phone, that phone. Is the state going to look into that option, which would make it open, less expensive, more available, but
more
safe?
Accessible, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, but it's generally the poorer people who have to go to work on Saturdays. People who are lucky like I am, and they work in a nice air-conditioned office, they can take Saturdays off, but it's not the poor.
John's right. People that work with their hands and work by the sweat of their brow, they need to be able to go and vote early. Yeah. Not often, like they did in Louisiana in the past, but vote early, but not often.
Early, and now instead of going at 6 a.m., it's 7 a.m. Well, lots more to discuss coming up next. We will include your questions about the new laws in Louisiana in 2013, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.